Okay, welcome everybody. Chapter 64, Samach Daled. Kapitel Samach Daled, Lam Natseach Mizmor David. By the conductor, for the conductor, Mizmor, a psalm for David. Shma Elikim Koili, Hashem should hear my voice. Bisichi, as I speak. Siach, the Hebrew word for speaking. Mipachad Oyev Titzar Chayev, from the fear of my enemy, you should preserve my life. Tastireni, hide me or give me shelter. Misoid Mireim, from the secrets, literal translation, from the secrets of the people who try to do bad, from the people who try to do bad. Mirigshas Payale Oven, and from the conspiracies of those who want to do bad, evil. Allah, Pasuk Dalid Asher Shananu, that they are sharpening kacherev, like a sword, l'shainam, their tongue, darchu chitzam davar mar, they're aiming their arrows for something. Davar is a word, so for a word that is bitter. Lirais, to shoot, b'mistarim tam, in hidden places. Tam, if you're familiar with the word, you have it at the Pesach Seder. The word, the character tam is the simpleton. So the simple people, otherwise translated in this case, the innocent people. Pitoim yoruhu, all of a sudden they shoot, v'lo yiro, and they're not afraid. Yichazku lamai, they strengthen themselves davara on these bad things. Yisapru litmain maikshim, and then they talk about, or they discuss about laying traps. Amru, they say, Mir lamai, who will see them? Pasuk Zayin, Yachbesu Eilais, they look for and they discuss pretexts. Tamnu, Chayfes, Mechubas, and they finish a very detailed search, searching upon searching. Vekerev Ish, and inside of the person, Velev Amayk, deep inside his heart. Pasuk Ches, Vayem Melikim, but Hashem shoots. Chetz Pisaim, a sudden arrow. Hayum Akaisam, which is their blow. Pasuk Tes, number 9, Vayachshiluhu Alemai, and it caused them to stumble. L'shainam, their tongue. Yisnaidadu, they shake their head. Kol ro'ebam, anybody who sees what happens. Vayiru kol adam, all and people are fearful. Vayagidu, and they discuss and they recount, they tell the story of Payal Hashem, of what Hashem has done. Umaaseyu, and his deeds, his skilu, are something that are well understood. Yismach tzaddik v'Hashem, the tzaddik, the righteous, rejoices within Hashem. The chasa boy, and he also takes refuge in Hashem. The yishalalu kol yushrei leiv, and the upright of heart, they take pride. So this is the first run of the kapitel. It leaves a lot to be understood. The couple of lines at the top, actually, I'm not even going to read. Not going to read the top lines. I'm actually going to say it outside. Say it separately. I'm going to discuss it. Okay, so as an introduction to this chapter, I wrote it in the email. It's fascinating when you come across a chapter in Tehillim. We've had it before, that they find parallels between the chapter of Tehillim and a different era. And in this case, the two eras that it talks about are different, are a whole different time. It's later. It's not in the time of David HaMelech. David HaMelech composes this chapter. So the first regular approach to the chapter is, like the Radak says, it's David referring to himself, and he's referring to the problems that he has from his enemies, specifically King Saul, and all the people that are saying lies against him to Shaul HaMelech, to King Saul. So that is the basic, the first and basic understanding of this chapter of Tehillim. But interestingly enough, the Medrash says, and Rashi quotes the Medrash, and even, and we're going to bring it up at different points throughout the capital, how Rashi brings it out, that David HaMelech here is referring to a story of Daniel. So I don't know if you're familiar, but one of the books of Tanakh is called Daniel. Daniel was a prophet. Famously, Daniel is the prophet that was thrown into the lion's den. I'm sure you've heard about the story, Daniel in the lion's den. Okay, so that's the story of Daniel. I'll tell you in a nutshell. I mean, it's a longer story, but Daniel was an advisor. First of all, he was a prophet, a prophet of God, and he was also very close to the king of the time. In Hebrew, his name is Daryavish. In English, we call him Darius. Okay, so if you heard the name Darius, Daniel was very close to Darius, and he was an advisor to him. Now, as we know throughout history, whenever there was a Jew that got too close, so there was anti-Semites that were even closer. And what happened was, psukim in the Navi, that they came and they tried to topple him. What's the easiest way to topple him? So they, one of the psukim says that over here that they put down what's the pasuk? They put down traps, right? And they say, who's going to see them? So they put down traps for Daniel. What did they do? So the pasuk says that they went over to the king, to Daryavish, to the King Darius, and they told him that, in order to make sure to see that everybody's really loyal to the king, you should make a decree that for the next 30 days, nobody is allowed to pray to anybody except for the King Darius. That was the Daryavish, brilliant idea. What a great idea, of course, right? Let's. So he puts out an edict for the next 30 days. Can't pray to anybody besides Daryavish. What did Daniel obviously do? He went and davened mincha to Hashem and Maidiv and Shachris, etc. And they said, "You see, look, he's not loyal to the king," which. At that point, if I remember correctly, I didn't open up the psukim today, but if I remember correctly, he felt bad, but he can't go against his word. He really liked Daniel, but he couldn't go against his word. And he threw Daniel into the lion's den, and a miracle happened. There's a Tehillim Elokim. We have this when it talks about Adam, that he was created b'tzelem Elokim. Even animals recognize that humans have a certain, godly something that, and it was awe-inspiring to the lions that they went against their nature and did not take a meal. They didn't take a meal. So that's what happened. And obviously, King Darius saw what happened, and he realized that he made a massive mistake. Took Daniel out of the pit and threw the others in. This is pasuk ends. So that's this story, and you will see soon how Rashi, based on the Medrash, brings it up throughout this chapter of Tehillim. So that's one approach to the chapter of Tehillim. Now you're going to say how David HaMelech and Daniel, how do they mix? It's obviously was said with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine intuition. The concept is, it seems, if I understood some of the commentaries correctly, that David was kind of drawing a parallel between troubles that he has and troubles that are going to come to a descendant of his, Daniel the prophet. Okay, so that's the way Rashi and the Medrash learn this chapter of Tehillim. And then there's the Sfarnu. The Sfarnu comes and says, no, David is bringing parallels between the story of Purim and his troubles, which is the scheming of the anti-Semite Haman. And the lies that he tells Achashverosh. Think about it. The lies that the advisors tell the king in order to get in order for the anti-Semite to get what he wants. And David HaMelech draws parallels between that and the issues that he was having with those that would say lies against him, those in order to get Shaul HaMelech, to get Saul, to get upset at him and want to kill him, and raid of him, to run after him to kill him. So those are the three approaches, really. And we'll see, each pasuk, I don't know if I'll mention each pasuk, but almost each pasuk, you see the approach of the Radak, which is that it's talking David HaMelech and it's talking about himself, or the approach of Rashi, based on the Medrash, that it's that David HaMelech is prophesying about what's going to happen with Daniel. the prophet Daniel, and the way the Sforno learns it, that it is talking about the parallels between David Melech's life and the story of Haman and Mordechai. So let's get right into it. Lam Natseach Mizmor LaDavid, a psalm for David. Pasuk base, pasuk number 2. Shema Elikim Koili. Hashem should hear my voice. Besichi, when I recount, when I retell. So right away Rashi comes, and as I mentioned, Rashi comes right away over here at the beginning and says this is talking about Daniel, and the Radak comes and says that David is saying that when I say Besichi, Shema Elikim Koili, Hashem should hear my voice. Besichi, when I say my story, you should keep in mind that I'm fearful, mipachad oyev. I'm fearful of my enemy, and he's referring to Shaul HaMelech, Titzar Chayei, and I'm afraid for my life. So help me preserve my life. And so that is Rashi and Radak. And the Sforno, as I mentioned, so he says that it's referring to the story of Purim. So he says, what's Sichi? Shema Elikim Koili, Hashem should hear my voice. Besichi, when I recount. What is the Sichi? What is when I recount? So he says that it's referring to the fast of Mordechai and Esther. As you remember the story of Purim, that Mordechai asks Esther to go to the king, and Esther says, first go and fast on my behalf, and then after 3-day fasting, then I will go into the king. And what is the fear? What's the mipachad oyev? What am I fearful? What's the enemy? The enemy is obviously Haman, that she is afraid of the anti-Semite, the enemy of Haman. That's pasuk base. Pasuk gimel, pasuk number 3. So he's asking for shelter. So again, Rashi comes here and says it's referring to Daniel, and the Radak says that when it says Misoid Mireim, the second and third word in the pasuk. So the first word is asking for shelter. Misoid Mireim. So if you remember, I translated the first time around. Misoid means from the secret. So what's the secret? Mireim, the secret of those who do bad, those who do evil. So what's the secret? It's like the secret society, that Radak says, the inside circle, the people that gather together and they share with each other the secrets, the evil people that share with each other a gathering. Now the Alshich comes here and says that it says over here 2 times negativity, 2 times bad. Mireim, the source word, the middle 2 letters is Ra, which means bad, evil. And then the last word is Oven, which is also evildoers or sinners. So what's the 2 parts? That there's Mireim, those who do evil, and Payalei Oven, those who do Oven, those who sin. What are the 2 aspects over here? And the Alshich comes here and says that there's 2 types of enemies. There is a type of enemy that they don't reveal to you that they hate you. They keep it a secret, and that's Misoid Mireim, the secret, the ones who hold the secret that they hate you or that they want to do bad to you. And this is talking about in the perspective of David HaMelech, that he had people that made as if they were friends, but really they were enemies. And what he's saying is that from those Misoid Mireim, Tasireni, shelter me from those, because I'm much more afraid of those who don't verbalize it. Mirikshas Payalei Oven, the ones who talk about it, those people I'm not so afraid of. Those people I can handle. At least I know where I stand with them. So that's the 2 parts of Pasuk Gimel according to the Alshich. The Sforno says that Misoid Mireim, that he's asking for shelter from those that are gathering together to talk evil. So the Sforno says that is talking about Haman and Achashverosh when they make the decree. If you remember and you're familiar with the story of Purim, what happens? Haman comes and has a whole grand plan that he tells the king, he tells Achashverosh, and Achashverosh says, sure, do it. And not only that, the money that you committed, that you promised me, yeah, you can keep that too. I'm not even interested in that. So that is the schemes of the Mireim, those who want to do evil. And then the second part talks about Merigshas Payalei Oven, the evildoers. Those are the others that instigated. So another part of the story, so the Sforno says this is referring to another part of the story, is when Mordechai doesn't bow when Haman passes by. So it doesn't say in the Megillah that Haman notices that Mordechai doesn't bow down. It's not what it says in the Megillah. The Megillah says that they told Haman, someone notified Haman, someone went and told Haman, by the way, you should know that Mordechai doesn't bow down. The servant of the king that went and told that told Haman this, that's who he's referring to as Payalei Avan, the conspiracy of the evildoers. And that's the two parts according to this farm. Yeah.
I'm kind of confused how we get to Purim and this. We have heard before, hide me and protect me and everything. So why suddenly is this interpreted as Purim? Anything to do with Purim or whatever?
So it's a good question, because in the pshat of it, Tastireni is hide me, and that's why I said the basic understanding of the pasuk obviously is talking about David HaMelech. Where the commentaries come in, especially the Medrash, it's a common thing for the Medrash to do. The idea of drush is a certain level of learning where you learn another layer within a pasuk. The concept that he's bringing up over here is the idea that there's parallels between David HaMelech's life and what's going to happen to the future. Now, why is there parallels? This I didn't see in the commentaries. This I could tell you. This is my own. In Yiddish we call it a boich svara. You know what a boich svara is? You know what a boich is? A boich is my stomach, right? In Yiddish, svara is an opinion. This is my style. This is my opinion. It's what it's worth. It's not. Who knows what it's worth? It's not worth much.
Feeling. Your gut feeling.
Yeah. No, it's less than that. The gut feeling is a powerful thing. It's just like, I have an opinion, like everybody else got an opinion.
But why this particular?
Oh, because
not any others that we've heard before that also could be interpreted like that.
There was one, and I'm trying to remember which chapter it was. It was in the teens, if I remember correctly. That was also very much connected. The Al-Shift connected it a lot to the story of Purim. Why? Weiß ich nicht. I'm not on that level that I have the understanding of, or even that how should I say it? That illumination, that understanding of a capital Tehillim, that this one's connected to this. I can only repeat to you what it says. That's the extent that I have.
Fair enough.
Right? No, but that being said, why does the Medrash Dafke come to this chapter and say that? Why the Medrash Dafke coming to this capital? That's a good question. I would say because there's so many verses here in this capital that do fit with another scenario. Now, in general, why even say that? Why bring that parallel? We've talked about other chapters that we could even bring as a parallel to our own lives or to the golus, to the exile that we're experiencing. I would say is David HaMelech coming and wanting to inspire a generation that's going to go through some hardships and tell them, look, I've gone through it before. This chapter, it describes my troubles. It describes how I dealt with people that lied about me to the king in order to get their way, and that they should run after me, kill me. I've been through that, and I got through it. How did I get through it? My betachin in Hashem. I put my faith and my trust in Hashem. So that's the way I see it. I don't know if that's the idea. Again, it's a boich svara. But that's the way I see it. That David HaMelech is coming to inspire next generation. He's not just coming to talk about himself and how he dealt with things, etc. He wants to make sure. And the truth is, till today, the Tehillim is used as an inspiration for bitachon, for putting trust in Hashem. It's an inspiration to see how Tzaddik dealt with his troubles and how he put, but in general, ultimately, always coming down to the idea of putting trust in Hashem. So that is the way I see it, and I would imagine that that's what David HaMelech is trying to inspire the next generation. Now, the Medrash comes many, many years later, at a much later time, and in order to in order to tell us this, in order to tell us the hindsight of this chapter of Tehillim, right? The Medrash is coming much later and telling us that, by the way, this Tehillim is also referring to Daniel. The value of hindsight is fascinating, right? So you could draw the parallels. Obviously, it's divinely inspired to come to that conclusion. But still, there's the value of hindsight. Very often, when you learn something of Torah, we have a class Mondays and Thursday mornings where we learn a Sikh of the Rebbe, and Sikh of the Rebbe is a talk from the Rebbe, an edited talk from the Rebbe, and one of the types of talks that happens more often is something called a Rashi Sikha. A Rashi Sikha the Rebbe did for many years, that out of Farbrengen, he would give a talk on a Rashi. What if you ever learned Rashi in depth, first of all, if you ever learned Chumash in depth, you'll realize that you can't learn a pasuk in Chumash without Rashi. You will never fully understand the pasuk in Chumash without Rashi. You need to learn the Rashi on it in order to understand it. Now, Rashi came to teach a very basic idea in order to help you flow through the psukim, in order for you to understand what's going on. Rashi came, like Basi Allah, Rashi only comes to explain to you the simple meaning, the pshutei shel mikra, the simple meaning of pshat. Now, Rashi doesn't say what's bothering him. He just comes and gives you an explanation. So, for generations, scholars have written and discussed it's a famous question: what's bothering Rashi? Right? You have a Rashi tells you something, but what was bothering him that he had to come here and give this explanation? and so the Rebbe would do this on a regular basis. Well, first of all, what's bothering Rashi, and why sometimes the Rashi doesn't give an explanation when there seemingly should be a question. And the Rebbe goes on and explains very often a Rashi in fascinating ways. And when you learn the Rashi first time through, and we do this on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday mornings. So we'll go through. Philip and David are not on tonight. They come to both of them are usually there at that class. David is busy by davening, and Philip's away, so they're not here tonight. But this concept of understanding Rashi. So what we do is you go through the Rashi and you think you understand it, and then we go through the Sikha, and then you look at the Rashi. It's a whole new Rashi. What you thought Rashi was trying to say, and what Rashi actually is saying is a whole different Rashi. Now, sometimes you wonder, was that really Rashi's? Was that really what Rashi had in mind? But so maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. I can't talk for Rashi. We joke that I wish we were in Gan Eden there, and the Rebbe sitting there with Rashi, and Rashi giving the Rebbe Yasher Koyach for explaining him so beautifully, or something like that. Or I didn't have that in mind, but it looks so, that's great, or something like that. But when you have a divinely inspired Pirish like Rashi, not a Pirish, a Beich Svara from me, not a commentary that I came to a certain conclusion. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone that merits to give a divinely inspired Pirish like Rashi, and then we have the Medrash, right? And we have the Sfarnu over here, and we have Radak, and others that we quote all the time, the Rishonim. They were real scholars. They really, they got to a level of divinity in order to give their commentary way beyond. So there is something divine about what they say. And that's why when we take a Pirish from Rashi, when we take a commentary from Rashi, we take a commentary from the Medrash, it's not just something that it's a nice explanation. No, it's Torah. It's a part of Torah. What do you do when Rashi and the Sfarno are arguing? So which one is it? Okay, L'chaim did it. We always say that both of them are correct. Now, what if it's a scenario that only one of them could be correct, right? What if only one way it could have, like, let's say they're arguing on a story. How did it happen, right? So only one of them could be correct. So what do we do in that kind of case, right? So obviously only one of them is correct, but the other one is still Torah because we could learn something from it. And when we take a chapter in Tehillim like we have today, And there's three approaches to the chapter of Tehillim. It's not just three approaches. There's three approaches that I'm bringing today, right? There's three approaches that we're bringing forward. And you take these three approaches and you say, hold on a second. This one, it doesn't inspire me. This one inspires me. Oh, so that's the one that you should grab onto. Meaning, what's the point that there is the different commentaries? What's the point that there is the Rashi and there's the Radak and there's the Sforno? Take the one that's inspiring to you, and that's what you should live off for the next week until the next Tehillim class. Anyways, that's all. I don't know how we got into the Farbrengen mode over here, but I think it's because we haven't had a Tehillim class in so long that I have to get back into it. So the Farbrengen helps. So l'chaim. But that's the concept, and that's why when we're learning this, I'm not just going to say one commentary. It's very easy. It would be very easy for me to say, okay, I'm going to do a Tehillim class, and we'll go through the chapter of Tehillim, and I'll explain to you the chapter of Tehillim. We'll do it in 6 minutes, 18 minutes if we need a lot of time, and we'll go through the chapter and explain it. But it's not so. That's not the real way of learning Torah. That's the way, in a secular subject, that could be the way to do it. You want to understand it and you want to move along. But in Torah, you want to understand it on multiple levels and take that level that's inspiring to you and make sure that it inspires your life. So with that being said, the whole Tehillim, I mean, one of the things, the main thing that I've been taking out of Tehillim is the idea of bitachon, the faith and the trust, really, that we have in Hashem. And here, David HaMelech is not only saying it for himself, but he's saying it for future generations. Could you imagine? Can you imagine for a second? You're the prophet of God. Don't imagine for too long, they'll send you to the loony bin. But you can imagine you're the prophet of God, and you get sent because you daven mincha, you get sent into the lion's den. What do you do then? Daniel, with his bitachon, was saved because of his bitachon. So think about that for a moment. I wish I was on the level of Daniel. Can you imagine even being remotely close to the level of Daniel? It would be a very powerful thing. But for a fleeting moment, when it's not about the lion's den, but it's when someone aggravated me, and then I say, okay, Hashem put him there, so he's aggravating me. Okay, I could live with that. That bitachon we could do, right? So that's what we should work on. Okay, where are we? Okay. We are Pasuk Gimel. Yeah, so Pasuk Gimel, we explained it according to the Sforno that it's referring to a future time of the story of Purim. So Pasuk Gimel was talking about, on the one hand, the evildoers getting together, meaning Haman and Achashverosh, with their decree, and the second part about the servants of the king that notify Haman that Mordechai is not bowing down, and the story unravels from there. And then the Sforno goes right into Pasuk Dalid, right in Pasuk 4, where it talks about sharpening their tongues like a sword, and the Sforno says that it's a continuation, obviously, that the servants of the king, the people who notified Haman about Mordechai not bowing down, they did it in such a sharp way, meaning the lashon hara, right? When someone talks lashon hara, when someone talks negatively, we say that a tongue can turn into a sword and it could literally kill someone. And they instigated not only about the fact that Mordechai wouldn't bow down, but also the idea of Amalek, who Haman represented and descended from, how they really are anti-Semites and want to kill Jews, etc. And that was the continuation of that. Rashi says that it's talking about the general idea of lashon hara, that when we speak Ashashonanu, that when we speak negative, when we speak bad about somebody else, when we speak out of turn about somebody else, lashon hara, so that is like a tongue that is sharp like a sword. And what is that lashon hara? It is a bitter davar, bitter word. Pasuk hey, pasuk number 5. So these people, okay, so these people, who are we talking about? Again, depending on which commentary we're going with, but these people, they shoot, they hide, and they shoot. They shoot Tom, simple, or the translation that I have over here, they translate Tom as innocent. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, Tom You should know the word from the Pesach Seder. There's one of the characters, one of the four sons is a tam. Tam we translate then as a simpleton. Over here, he translated it as innocent, but it's the same idea that we're talking about. The people that are shooting, they're shooting towards a tam, whether you're talking about the simpleness of the people or talking about the innocence of those people. So the Radak that says that it's talking about David HaMelech, so David HaMelech considers himself as a simpleton, so to speak. What does it mean that he's a simpleton? That he went with simplicity. He never wanted to hurt anybody. He never felt like he wanted to hurt. He didn't think that anybody wanted to hurt him. So he was never even watching his back, because he thought these people are my friends, etc. Until he learned otherwise. So that's the idea according to Radak that David HaMelech is talking about himself, about them hiding and shooting against them, shooting their arrows against them, and they're not being afraid. The Alshich says that's connected to something that we said earlier about people that hide the way they feel. David HaMelech is saying over here that I'm most afraid of those people because I can't predict of where they stand and where they're going to be. The other time I mentioned tam as the Pesach Seder, there is a time in the Torah that it says the word tam. When does it say the word tam in the Torah? It says Yaakov ish tam Yoshev Oyhalim. It says the Yaakov, Jacob, our forefather, is ish tam, and he sat in tents, which meant that he was a simple person, so to speak, like he wasn't involved in big worldly things. And Yoshev Oyhalim, he sat in tents, means that he sat and studied Torah. That's the reference in the pasuk. The Sforno comes over here and says that when it says in this pasuk that they're trying to kill Tam, who is Tam? It's referring to the descendants of Yaakov in the story of Purim, because Yaakov is who's Ish Tam is Yaakov. The descendants of Yaakov are the Jewish people, and all of a sudden in the story of Purim, where they get permission, that all of a sudden in one day they could go they could go and kill all the Jews in all the lands. And why? And as he continues, he says they weren't afraid. Why weren't they afraid? Because they thought that Haman was a strong man, and he was a big man at that point, and they felt secure and safe standing behind Haman. And that's the way Sforno explains pasuk number 5. Pasuk 6, they even encourage themselves. And they hide traps, and they say, "Who will see these traps?" So that's the pasuk. So Rashi says that it's referring to the traps that the advisors of the king laid for the prophet Daniel, right? What was the trap? That they would say that nobody should daven to anybody else besides King Darius, besides Darius the king, for 30 days. Nobody, the king and nobody else was any wiser to the trap that was being laid, right? So they lay traps, and they say, who's going to be able to recognize the traps that we laid? That's the way Rashi explains this pasuk. The Radak, the Radak explains this pasuk that it's the enemies of David HaMelech that were lying to King Saul about David, and they would say Mi yira lamai, that when it says who will see, David HaMelech is referring to that these people think that Hashem is not watching. They think that Hashem is watching, and others say that it's these people that are laying the traps. Not that they're saying who's going to see, meaning Hashem, not recognizing that Hashem is going to watch. That Hashem is saying, but meaning that who's going to see, who's going to catch the traps before David gets caught in the trap. So different ways to learn that end of the pasuk of Mi yira lamai, who will see the traps. The Sforno says there is. When you learn the story of Purim, there's Achashverosh and Haman were of the opinion, they felt very strongly that Hashem has turned his back against the Jewish people. They felt, whether it's because the Jewish people ate by the Suda, by the festive meal, or because of the handwriting on the wall, etc. There's a lot of background to the story that's not in the Megillah itself, that Achashverosh and Haman felt that Hashem turned his back on the Jewish people. And that's why the Sfarnu over here at the end of the pasuk when it says Mir Elamai, that they strengthen themselves and they say we're going to lay traps against the Jewish people, etc. And who's going to see? Meaning Hashem already doesn't care about the Jewish people, and that's what strengthened them in their anti-Semitism, so to speak, in their fight against the Mordechai and the Jewish people. And that's the Sfarnu. So we asked before why Dafka this chapter connected to Purim or connected to Daniel. A lot of these psukim are unique sentences that we don't have in others, and they fit very well with the story. And again, that's where it comes from, I would assume. Pasuk Zayin, pasuk number 7. So they look for pretexts and they keep and they make a diligent search. They look and look, and the plot they keep inside and deep inside their heart. So Rashi over here says, talking about against the plot that they made against the prophet Daniel, and they kept it very, very secret. Obviously, the idea of not praying to any god, to anybody besides the king for 30 days, kept it very secret within themselves. They diligently looked for that idea that would trap the prophet, and they kept it inside their hearts and inside their minds. The Radak says that it's referring to people that are trying to find things against David. As we know, we mentioned a few characters throughout the classes of Tehillim, Dayeg and others that would always try to find a way to find something that David HaMelech did that would anger Shaul and get Shaul all riled up against David. And David is complaining here in this pasuk, according to the Radak, that they're looking and looking, trying to find something, and they're keeping the secret inside of them instead of using all that energy and all that brain space and all that power to do teshuvah. The Sfarnu says that this is referring to Haman and his advisors. In the Megillah, we even have the story that Haman goes and before he makes a big decision, he didn't do it himself. He called his wife. He called it Chol Oyav of all his loved ones, meaning he made sure that he got everybody involved. So all those people, they looked, they investigated and tried to figure out a way to justify the anti-Semitism. It's not just by Haman. It's unfortunately something that we have throughout the generations, and even today, where anti-Semites come and they justify their anti-Semitism. It's not really anti-Semitism. It's this, it's that, etc. So that's it. It's not something new. It goes back thousands of years. Pasuk Ches, pasuk 8. What happens ultimately? David HaMelech, he says that ultimately the arrow goes back into their face. The arrow that they shoot gets blown back into them, or Hashem, or the idea that Hashem sends an arrow in their direction. Pitoim, all of a sudden, without any warning, just like in the earlier pasuk, it says that they send an arrow without warning. Hashem gets them also an arrow with the arrow, sends an arrow their way without warning. What's that referring to? So Rashi says, famously, as we mentioned in the beginning of the class, that what happened to those advisors of Darius that came up with this evil plan of the 30 days, they got thrown into the lion's den. Right, that's what happened with all those advisors. So what the concept in Judaism is called midah keneged midah, measure for measure. In general, the way, if you want to understand a little bit of how Hashem works, it's midah keneged midah is one of those characteristic ideas of God. So measure for measure over here, they wanted to kill the prophet Daniel by throwing him into the lion's den. They got thrown in. So that's the idea, that they tried to throw an arrow, they got thrown back the arrow. That's the pasuk 8. The Radak says that it's referring to the arrows, not physical arrows, but the arrows that are used with negativity, with lashon hara, with words against David. So this will be also midah keneged midah, back at them, that they will suffer the same thing that they were trying to bring on to somebody else. And the Sfarnu also brings up the idea of midah keneged midah. And where in the story of Purim do we have the idea of midah keneged midah? Haman builds the we've just mentioned the previous pasuk, that he gathers his his loved ones, his wife and his loved ones. And what was the upshot of that meeting? What was it? That they should make a gallows 50 amas high, right, 75 feet tall, and in the morning go to the king and tell the king to hang Mordechai on it. Right? What happens? He gets hung on it. That's the midah keneged midah, and that's pasuk ches. So whichever the pasuk 8 is talking about this idea of measure for measure. Whichever way you learn the chapter, it's what it represents. So again, talked about before about what do we take out of it? We should take out the idea of midah keneged midah, of making sure that we keep our actions in a proper way, because ultimately things come back measure for measure, not karma, not at all an idea of karma. Karma is a very non-Jewish idea. I mean, they took a Jewish idea and perverted it, but because midah keneged midah is a Jewish idea, it's a reality. You create a reality. When you do something, you're creating a reality. When you do something positive, you create a positive reality, and that comes back towards you. And that's what we have to recognize. That's what we should do. We should always be creating positivity around us. Pasuk Tes, pasuk.
Excuse me, Leibel, when we were reading this verse rather, I was thinking also about Yonatan's arrow, that the signal to David that he was going to be in trouble, that the arrow was also sent, and it was, you could say, a suddenly sent, but the idea was that the arrow signified whether he was safe or not. And
right.
So somehow, I don't know, it just made me think about it, that arrow is also Hashem's arrow, when that David had somebody who was there to help protect him in a physical way, the way Hashem protects in other ways.
Right. Good. Very good. Yeah. Another layer. Okay. Good. So pasuk 9. So vayachilu aleimai l'shayim, they caused them to stumble, right? And everybody that's watching. So this is the midah keneged midah. This is measure for measure. So Rashi and Metzudas, based on the Medrash, so they say that what happens, that they get punished in the same way that they try to attack somebody else. So they bring it onto themselves, and anybody who sees it, anybody who sees it shakes their head in in the opposite of wonderment, and like obvious, like, why do you do that to yourself? Like, why would you even try if you know that Hashem is going to send it back your way? So that's the way Rashi explains the pasuk, and the Radak explains the pasuk, that their negative words will come back to haunt them, to the extent that everybody, when it comes back to haunt them, people will be shaken at how it's interesting that Rashi says it in a way that people are like, obviously that's what's going to happen to you if you start up with God, so to speak, or God's anointed, and the Radak says no, that people are going to be like so amazed, like, wow, that was like a revelation of God almost, that people are going to be shaking from that. And the Al-Shif says that it's really the idea of everybody will shake their head, that they're gonna, meaning that everybody will recognize that it comes from God, because when it's midah keneged midah, when it's measure for measure, that's when you're gonna recognize that it actually comes from Hashem. I saw something in the Mamlayis. It's a concept. I was debating if I should bring it up, but I think it's important to talk about this in general. There's a concept in Judaism that goes like this: Kol ha-paisel b'mumay paisel. Kol ha-posel. What does paisel mean? Someone that cancels. Anybody who cancels somebody else or says something negative about somebody else, ultimately he's saying something negative about himself. What's the concept? The source of this concept is that if you could recognize a negativity, that means that you have it in yourself. You can't recognize a negativity if you never experienced it, if you don't know about it, the only way is if you have even on a little bit. Even if that guy can have it a lot, but I have it a little bit, right? I can't recognize it in somebody else if I don't have it in my own. There's a famous story, and I forget which Chabad Rebbe, that someone came to him and for Yechidus and a private audience, and he said something to Rebbe, and he left, and there was, it put a pause on all the other meetings for a while, And then they asked him, like, why do you need the pause? It was like an hour and a half. It says, because he came to me with a problem and I couldn't put myself into that problem properly in order to help him. So I needed to spend the time to meditate about it in order to be able to help him with this problem. Meaning that in order to really, if you understand someone else's problem, it means that you have that too, you have that by yourself. So as soon as someone comes and says, oh, Yankel has this and this issue. If you recognize it by Yankel, it means that you know about it. It means it's something that you struggle with as well, etc., right? So this is the idea. And so the Mamleas comes and says on Pasuk 9 that when someone says something lashon hara, says something negative about somebody else, he's really saying something negative about himself. And that's that everybody's watching is like, you just said that. That's you. You're saying about a Yankel, right? This is you're talking about yourself. Now, obviously, we're not talking about when someone comes and he's really trying to help somebody and he says, Yankel, really, I noticed this, and if there's any way I can help you with it, please let me know. And I maybe this could help, maybe that could help. We're not talking about that. We're talking about that someone that sits down and says, Yankel, the negativity of lashon hara, and that's something that if you recognize it as a problem, it means that you deal with the problem as well, or don't deal with the problem, know of the problem all too well, and that's also this concept of it's related to midah connected midah of measure for measure, but not really, because it's not that the measure comes back. No, the actual fact that you're even talking about it means that it's really your problem that you have to deal with. And to the extent that especially in Hasidic philosophy, we say that if you see something negative in somebody else, fix it by yourself. If you even notice, forget about if you talk about it, if you even notice something negative, that why did Hashem show it to you? He showed it to you in order for you to fix it by yourself. And that's why Hashem even showed it to you, or they even recognize that it's a problem, etc. Pasuk Yud, Pasuk 10. Now, after such a thing happens, everybody recognizes that it comes from Hashem. As the Mitzvah says, that from here on, everybody will be afraid because they'll recognize that Hashem has done this, that everything that V'yiru kol adam, everybody will be afraid. And what are they going to say? Pa'al Elokim, this is the work of God. And they'll understand that it comes from Hashem. And the Radak says similar, that everybody will realize that Hashem is watching, that Hashem is judging, and the Alshach continues as well, that everybody understands that Hashem works midah connected midah, measure for measure, and the Svarnu says that Vayiru kol adam, people were afraid, Vayagidu, and they talked about the story of what happened, of what Hashem did. Says it's referring to the Megillah, the story that was written into the Megillah, and that's talking about what Hashem has done. And Pasuk Yud Aleph, Pasuk 11. So there's the righteous rejoice and take refuge in Hashem. So the righteous rejoice and take refuge in Hashem, and then all the upright of heart take pride. So who is the righteous? Who is the upright of heart? So I'm sure you could guess. The Svarnu says that the righteous over here is referring to Mordechai, and the upright of heart are those who were part of Mordechai's camp and thanked Hashem for the miracles that he's done. Rashi comes and says, who's the tzaddik? Yismach tzaddik, the tzaddik will rejoice, obviously talking about Daniel, the prophet Daniel. And then when he continues, says, and those who take pride, the ones who are upright of heart. Who's upright of heart? Those who put their betachin in Hashem, those who put their trust in Hashem. And the Radak says that when he says Yismach tzaddik, that the righteous, the tzaddik will rejoice, he says that David HaMelech is referring to himself. He's referring to himself that he's righteous in his fight, that they're chasing him for nothing. He didn't do anything to them, and he always felt that he didn't deserve that they should be running after him. He always looked out for their best interests, and he is righteous in the fight, so to speak, and therefore he puts his trust in Hashem, because if he's righteous and he puts his trust in Hashem, Hashem will definitely take him. That we finish chapter 64.